On today's video, I'll be talking about Doge and all the changes and all the drama that has been bringing along regarding whether Elon Musk has the power to do what he's supposed to do, and also a clear point that is being made that that's what people voted for Donald Trump for. There's many things that he's being applying that is what many people wanted. And as a libertarian myself, I'm loving it. So my thought about the whole situation, I think there's some part that is just politics, that the left are just going to disagree to anything that the Republicans do, and vice versa. Sometimes Democrats can bring good things along, and Republicans just gonna reject it because that is always the state of politics. You don't want to give a win to the opposing party. Although I think on some cases there should be some exception, but that's besides the point. Some of you might wonder, how did Doge got involved with this whole situation with USAID and other information? The reason is, so I don't know if you guys recall that Donald Trump pushed an executive order to stop any foreign payment for 90 days. And the way that just think about it as for example, I have a technical background. If I'm trying to figure it out which accounts or which groups have certain access, or let's look at a company from a credit card perspective. Let's say you have handed out 500 credit cards in your company, and you want to see who's spending the cards and who's using what. You disable all the credit cards, and now you're gonna see who's going to start complaining. And that's similar the approach that Doge had on this situation. Donald Trump passed an executive order saying they were gonna post all foreign aid, and USAID started trying to get around it. And they pretty much pull the bullseye on their face, because they draw the attention that they wanted to see. They wanted to see who was breaking what, who was doing what. It's kind of like you have the similar what I mentioned with the credit cards. And it's quite interesting how this is what got all the focus. And Democrats are mad. Democrats are saying, Elon Musk was not elected. People voted for Donald Trump. People wanted to see change. And one thing that people, regardless whether you're Democrat, liberal, whatever you are, the US has a spending issue. And you're not seeing it right now, but your kids are going to pay for that. Our sons are going to pay for that. And if we don't handle our situation about the US debt, there's going to be a problem. And like any company, nobody likes the auditor, because the auditor is going to tell you where you have the problem and what you have to fix. And that's exactly what Doge is doing. And I was watching this podcast a couple of days ago, where a podcast that I really like is called All In, I think. And I want to show his take, that way you guys can see some of the points that he was making, and that way you guys can understand how much the Democrats have changed. Which, funny enough, Democrats were the one who pushed for efficiency in previous attempts. And there was a bipartisan agreement about how to reduce the spending in the US. And the reason they're complaining, and the reason some Republicans are complaining, is because they're all in for the money. There's a reason these people are making $170K and they're multimillionaires. Because they don't want people looking. They don't want people looking because there's something out there. And I think everyone can agree. There should be some transparency. It's just simple. There should be some transparency where the money is being spent. The US cannot go at this pace of spending $1 trillion every 100 days. We just can't do it. We cannot afford it, because what happened with COVID is because too much money. Too much money. It devalues our currency. Don't think about it as things getting more expensive. Think about it as whatever you have is devalued. Imagine you have $10,000 in your bank account, or $1,000 in your bank account. And every time the government prints money, it devalues what that $1,000 can buy. That's why 2010s, buying $150 in groceries was a lot. How much is that right now? You spend right now $200, and it doesn't compare, because we cannot afford the devaluing of the US currency. That's a good, and we need to make it a stronger currency again. At the end, we are the world reserve, so we gotta act like it. So I'm gonna show you here the clip that I was referring to about.
So the first thing that I think it's important to acknowledge is this is not new. We've done Doge twice before. Both have been successful. The Harry Truman one was incredibly important because it really set guardrails for how this can be done. Everything in that committee, it was a Senate committee, was unanimous. So it was Republicans and Democrats that found waste, fraud, and abuse everywhere. They saved an enormous amount of money. The second, which is interesting, is these last two versions of Doge were driven and led by Democrats, the same people today who are basically saying, hey, hold on a second, we have congressional committees or we have inspector generals. And they lack the awareness to know that their own party was the driving force for this 2 times before. And I think it's important to just acknowledge that those methods are not good anymore, right? Because I think what we're finding early days is the rot is super pervasive. There's no accountability. And so I think you need people to look at it with fresh eyes. And what is Doge at the end of the day? What they are read-only auditors of the truth. And the press secretary in the White House made this very clear. It's incredible the power that read-only access gives you. All it allows you to do is just take the data and present the data. They can't manipulate it. And what they're able to do is publish all of this stuff in real time. And that's why this is so important, because if it went into a congressional committee, to be honest with you, it would sit there and stew for 6, 7, 8, 9 months. You would maybe get small little tidbits of it, but now instead you're just getting the full thrust of it. And what is the biggest thing that I find concerning? I think it's what Antonio said, which is that the media, who are supposed to be this intermediary layer that's totally objective between the government and the people, were not independent at all, but had all kinds of hidden incentives. $8 million to Politico, several $1 million to the BBC. I think it's important to ask what's going on. And by the way, that also has historical context. This is exactly what happened in the 60s and 70s, where it turned out that record companies were paying DJs to play songs. There was a huge set of lawsuits and trial cases, and the result was a change in the law, right? And we call that payola now, which is you cannot take this money without disclosing it. And so had this money been absorbed by these entities and actually disclosed, maybe we'd be okay. But Nick, I sent you a link. Maybe you can throw it on the screen for these guys. This is a very simple manifestation of this cycle. We talked about this, guys, and we didn't realize how connected it all was. But we were asking ourselves during the election cycle last year, why are all these articles buried? Why aren't we really getting the truth? And it turns out that the people who were responsible for telling the truth, somewhere along the chain, were cajoled or just told not to tell the truth, influenced by all of this back channel money that was going back and forth from the government to these folks.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if this happened to many of you. The first time you saw the news, it kind of looked like you were in a movie. Like you're like, this doesn't make sense. Although you had a feeling, because there's no way certain organizations like the Pentagon, they cannot pass an audit. And then they do all this manipulation talk to tell you how, oh yeah, no, we're not overspending the money. We just cannot justify. No, of course there's overspending. Because when you spend the money that's not yours, you don't care. And it's the same as you're playing with Monopoly money. When you play with Monopoly money, you don't win anything. But when the money's yours, I think more money should be kept in the hands of the people. That's why you have to reduce the size of the government, and that's why you have to close many of these organizations. And one thing that many people did not notice, why did the size of the money that was spent by USAID went from like 14-20 million to 45 million under the Biden administration? Why? That's more money that we don't get. And one tiny thing people are not paying attention, regardless how you feel about Trump. Your taxes would have gone up if Trump would have gotten elected. Because that's coming right now. I think that's expiring at the end of this year, I think. The Trump tax cuts that he passed back in 2017, they expire next year. So that has to be renewed. We're talking about, at least personally, I would have seen a 4 to 8% difference in taxes. But the other part is on the political side. Political with the 8.4 million that have been paid to the from USAID. And people and I was reading this article from CNN. The way that they were defending, pretending as if we're stupid. They're like, no. The government did not pay any money to any organization. They just pay subscriptions and licenses. Can you tell me how in the fuck can you spend $8 million in subscriptions? Again, is the reason it's not their money. They don't give a damn. They just want to secure as soon as that paycheck comes in. Of course, they're gonna take your money from your paycheck. Of course, they are, and they're gonna play whatever they're gonna play with that money. That's not theirs. And I think there should be some clarity. Personally, as a libertarian, I am for closing probably half the government. Probably have a process, maybe a couple of months. That way, people are able to go to the private sector and find some jobs. But I think the government should be a part-time. Same as it is in Switzerland. The more time these people spend over there, the more time they have to plan to see how they get around. There's a reason why Elizabeth Warren is a millionaire. There's a reason Mitch McConnell is a multimillionaire. There's a reason Biden is a multimillionaire, and many other reasons like that. No. All those people part-time. You don't need to make that much money. No insider trading. No more BS bills, saving children, and then you're gonna be sending money to a bunch of random stuff like we have seen on many of the articles, which I'm going to show you here in just a second.
Because you can't really defend this kind of stuff. $45 million for diversity and inclusion scholarships in Burma. $3 million for girl-centered climate action in Brazil. $125 million to racialize public health. $288,000 for diverse birdwatcher groups. USAID, which is in the center of the storm right now, and rightfully so, spent $1.5 billion to, quote, advance diversity, equity, inclusion in Serbia's workplaces and business communities. $70,000 for the production of a DEI musical in Ireland. $2.5 billion for electric vehicles for Vietnam. $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia. Not Columbia, Missouri, or Columbia, South Carolina, the country of Colombia. $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. $2 million for sex changes and LGBT activism in Guatemala. $6 million to fund tourism in Egypt. This is what they're mad about.
So FEMA said $59 million for the homeless to have luxury hotels right in front of your freaking face. Come on, guys. I mean, this cannot be a Republican or Democrat issue. There's no way there's people that were suffering under the hurricane in North Carolina, the situation that has happened in Los Angeles, and you're gonna tell me that you're going to allocate $49 million for illegal immigrants? I'm sorry. The people that get you elected are the citizens. What the hell is going on? And I'm going to close it with two comments, which is how Elizabeth Warren was saying, nobody elected Elon Musk, that nobody voted for Elon Musk. I wonder the same question. Nobody voted for Kamala Harris. And somehow she was in the ballot. She was in the ballot the same exact way that the dictator in Cuba is president right now. There was no election. There was no primaries for her. She was just the vice president, and they just put her right there, and people did not say a thing. Do you imagine if Donald Trump would have done the same? Oh boy. So I'm going to close it with this clip from Elon Musk where he's exactly explaining that the same way Kamala Harris says elections have consequences. That's the reason people voted for Donald Trump, because he said he was going to do what he's doing right now.
The people voted for major government reform. There should be no doubt about that. That was on the campaign. The president spoke about that at every rally. The people voted for major government reform. And that's what people are going to get. They're going to get what they voted for. And a lot of times, people that don't get what they voted for, but in this presidency, they are going to get what they voted for. And that's what democracy is all about.